For a long time, I thought nightmares were just the brain malfunctioning during sleep. Stress, anxiety, random fear responses. Something meaningless that happened when the mind shut off. But the mind doesn't shut off when you sleep. It switches modes. And nightmares are not random. They're purposeful. When you're awake, your brain is focused on survival, logic, and control. You decide what to think about. You choose what to avoid. You suppress uncomfortable emotions because they get in the way of functioning. Sleep removes that control. During sleep especially, REM sleep, the brain begins processing emotional material that never got resolved during the day, or sometimes years ago. This is where nightmares come in. A nightmare is the brain's attempt to work through unresolved psychological conflict. Think of it as unfinished business. When an experience creates strong emotion, fear, guilt, shame, grief, but never reaches resolution, the brain stores it as an open loop. During the day, that loop stays quiet because you're distracted. At night, when distractions disappear, the brain returns to it. If the emotion is mild, you get a normal dream. If the emotion is intense and unresolved, you get a nightmare. The brain doesn't replay these conflicts logically. It doesn't show you exact memories. Instead, it recreates the feeling of the conflict using symbolic situations: being chased, trapped, frozen, lost, or unable to speak. These scenarios all share one thing in common: lack of control. That's not accidental. Unresolved conflict always involves a loss of control at some point. Something happened that you couldn't stop, couldn't change, or couldn't respond to the way you needed to. The nightmare recreates that emotional state so the brain can attempt to process it again. This is why recurring nightmares are so common. The brain keeps replaying the same emotional problem because it hasn't been solved yet. And waking up in fear doesn't mean the process worked. It means it failed. A nightmare ends abruptly because the emotional intensity becomes too high. Your nervous system activates, your heart rate spikes, and you wake up before the brain can complete the emotional processing. So the conflict remains unresolved, and the cycle repeats. This explains why nightmares often feel more real than normal dreams. During REM sleep, the parts of the brain responsible for emotion are highly active, while the parts responsible for logic and reality checking are suppressed. That means your brain feels the emotion fully, without questioning it. The fear isn't imagined. It's real emotional energy that never found resolution. Nightmares also tend to appear during certain life conditions, periods of stress, emotional suppression, isolation, or major change. Not because those things cause nightmares, but because they create more unresolved emotional material. The more you avoid dealing with something during the day, the more likely it is to surface at night. This is why people who appear calm, controlled, and emotionally restrained often report intense nightmares. Their waking mind keeps everything contained. Their sleeping mind does not. Nightmares are essentially forced emotional exposure. The brain is trying to simulate the conflict in a safe environment asleep, so it can be processed without real-world consequences. But when the conflict is too threatening, the simulation becomes overwhelming, and the dream turns hostile. That's when fear takes over. From a dark psychology perspective, nightmares reveal what the conscious mind refuses to acknowledge. They point directly to emotional blind spots, areas where your self-image doesn't align with your emotional reality. They expose guilt you haven't forgiven, fear you haven't admitted, anger you never expressed, and they do it without subtlety. The reason nightmares feel like your subconscious is screaming is because softer signals didn't work. Normal dreams weren't enough. Daytime anxiety wasn't enough. So the brain escalates. Fear is the loudest signal it has. When nightmares stop, it's usually not because the problem disappeared. It's because the conflict was either processed, accepted, or integrated into your conscious understanding. Sometimes that happens through reflection, sometimes through therapy, sometimes through confrontation, sometimes through acceptance. And sometimes it doesn't happen at all. In those cases, the nightmares evolve. They change form, but not meaning. Different images, same emotion. If you want to understand your nightmares, don't focus on symbols. Focus on the emotional question they're asking. Where do you feel trapped? What are you avoiding? What remains unfinished? Because nightmares aren't trying to scare you. They're trying to complete a process your waking mind refuses to finish. And until that process is complete, Your subconscious will keep finding ways to reach you, even if it has to scream.